Good evening and welcome to Facebook Live. This is Sex Addiction in the News. I'm Stacy Sprout, author of my own story of sexual recovery called Naked in Public, a memoir of recovery from sexual addiction and other temporary insanities. And I am here with three amazing women. So our show has transitioned and is transitioning into an interview show because there are so many people that have so many great things to say. And tonight I am bringing you the first three people. Oh, there's my husband. Hi, honey. Women who are making a difference in an area that we so need in the world, which is international public education about female sex, love, and porn addiction. And one of the reasons that women are so invisible when it comes to looking at this issue and getting them help is that we don't see ourselves reflected anywhere. And these women are changing that. And so I'll do a brief introduction. This is Amy Smith, Erica Garza, and Charlene de Guzman. And we're going to talk with you tonight about what they're up to, their projects. We're going to talk about what it's like to go public as a female sex, love, or porn addict. And then we're going to talk about what the differences and similarities are for women for those three particular categories. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to let Amy Smith take it away and talk with you about what she's up to.
Thanks, Stacy. So my name's Amy Smith, and I'm the founder of an organization called Worth Recovery. I started recovery for my own personal sex addiction in 2011. And it's been a crazy journey, and were not and have not been and still are not enough resources for women looking for help in recovering from sex addiction, love addiction, porn addiction, any of those S-type addictions, sex-type addictions. And so in 2016, I decided it was time to tell my story and go public. So I did, and through a podcast called the Worth Recovery Podcast, which I started in February of 2016. And so for the last 2 years, I've been sharing my own story in sex addiction recovery, the ups and downs, the bumps, the bruises, as well as interviewing other sex addicts, female sex addicts, therapists, people who are willing to talk about this issue and share their knowledge and experience. Along with that, we do, Worth Recovery does one-day intensive retreats for women in sex addiction, where we try to bring women together in a local area and really talk about this issue. And then I also do personal recovery coaching for women in sex addiction. So I've been doing that since about 2016, and it's been awesome.
Hi, my name is Erica Garza. I'm the author of Getting Off: One Woman's Journey Through Sex and Porn Addiction, which was published by Simon & Schuster this January. I started writing about sex addiction in 2014, just with some essays that I published in online magazines. And I started writing mainly to help myself and figure out what was happening and how I'd gotten to this point in my life. But after publishing the essays, I started hearing from other addicts, men and women, who were just so thankful that I was talking about something, because they had felt really alone for a long time and didn't feel so alone anymore. So I really felt at that point that I was doing important work, and that by writing, I could not only heal myself, but reach other people who needed it.
Hi, I'm Charlene de Guzman. I am the writer and star of the feature film Unlovable. It premiered at South by Southwest last March, and we just did the Bentonville Film Festival this week, and we're doing a bunch of more film festivals, and we'll have a future theatrical release as well. I'm also an advice columnist for Flood magazine, so I can answer questions about love and relationships. My intention with all my projects, including my movie, is to bring awareness to sex and love addiction and help other people feel less alone and take away the stigma and the shame around this, so that we can heal what hasn't been spoken.
Thank you all for those introductions. I forgot to say that we are broadcasting live from the International Institute of Trauma and Addiction Professionals annual symposium here in Phoenix, Arizona. So this is where they train therapists from all over the world who want to or are already certified as sex addiction therapists. And it is a joy to be here. And I've been watching these women over time, and some finally getting some press out there through their work. And what's also true in addition to that is just hearing the feedback that I get to hear from women about how they're affected by the fact that there's a movie out, the fact that there's a book out, and there's news stories all over the world about this book, and the podcast also all over the world. So we're looking at global reach, and I'm so excited about that. And so I want to ask this question to each of you, and that is, what is it like to be out publicly as a sex, love, and porn addict or porn addict? And how has it gone? How have people reacted? Is it there's been any difficulties, or has it been just right for you? Just tell us what your experience is about that, because I know there are many women who have movies and books and maybe podcasts in them, and they think be too scary or something bad would happen. I know I did. We thought we'd have to hire security the minute I published my book, and turns out we haven't. So that's very good. But those fears are big. So it's good to hear some real life experience about what it's like. So should we go in the same order? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it. Yeah. So the day after I published my first podcast episode, which tells kind of my story and the purpose that why I wanted to share my story, I didn't get out of bed because I had this huge vulnerability hangover of what did I just do? I just took everything that was private and personal and huge for me in my life, and I put it on the internet for anybody who wanted to look at it or listen forever, right? I put it out in the world forever, and I loaded it to iTunes, and it was pretty crazy. And I had to make a lot of calls and say, is this still what I want to do? And I toyed, I would say, for 3 or 4 weeks of just taking the whole thing down, because it just felt so big and was so scary. That was 2 years ago. So fast forward now, 2 years, and it's probably been some of the most healing work that I've ever done. Just hearing from women, as was talked about earlier, I instantly started getting emails and comments from people who saying me too, oh my gosh, you're talking about this, I didn't know that, and all these different things. And from hearing those stories has made everything worth it. I always say that every time I hear another woman's story, there's a little piece of me that heals more, every time. And it could be a story I've heard 3 or 4 times, but to hear it again from someone else, from a woman, to talk about their addiction and their story heals me. And every time I tell my story, a little piece of me heals a little bit more. And so for that, I will be forever grateful. I haven't had a whole lot of negative problems. Like you were saying, I had a lot of fear of a lot of backlash. I wasn't worried about hiring security, but just a lot of negativity, a lot of backlash. I had already received a lot of that. I had been told women can't be sex addicts. I'd been told women don't recover from sex addiction. I was told, it was biologically impossible for a woman to have a sex addiction. And so I didn't get it. I was expecting that and didn't get a lot of it, which I was super grateful for. I don't know how I would have weathered a lot of that. But overall, it's been a great journey, really, really challenging. It took my recovery to a whole different level. So really challenging, really great, really rewarding.
Like Amy, I was also preparing myself for a lot of backlash when I started to write about this, especially from people that I knew. I wasn't so worried about the strangers that I'll never face, but more of my parents. What are they going to think? Are they going to think that they did something wrong raising me? But I've actually had a really positive experience, and I'm grateful for that. When it comes to my parents, I think they realized that writing this book was a big part of healing. And I mean, what parent wouldn't want to support their child in healing the best way they know how? And, you know, as Amy was saying, I also receive so many messages from men and women. And I love hearing from women who have felt so alone, but also hearing from men who think that a woman won't understand what they're going through. That has also been something that I feel really proud of bringing light to and helping them discover that we're not so different after all. But I also just found the whole thing very relieving. You know, I mean, so much of my addiction was about feeling really disconnected from other people and isolated and ashamed and afraid of people finding out who I really was. And, you know, if they found out, then they'd all run away and, you know, say terrible things about me. But I've found that people have been really kind and warm, and I felt more connected to other people than ever before. So I know that I'm doing something right, and I really hope other women and men will come forward and speak about these things so that they could feel that too.
I actually started to speak my truth publicly on a really large level when the hashtag Yes All Women movement started. And I think that was in 2013 or 2014, maybe. And it was really scary, but it kind of shifted my whole perspective on everything, because it really showed me that all the things that I thought I should be ashamed of, when I shared it, it actually helped a lot of people. And for me to experience that firsthand really changed my outlook on everything, and especially on myself. And it made it easier for me to accept and forgive myself and really forgive any of those things that I thought I should be ashamed of. But you know what? My family didn't take it well. You know, they were only available, you know, at some point to a certain extent, like, and that was a good healing for me in terms of remembering that I'm not speaking my truth for them or for anyone else. I'm doing it for myself, and the people that need it are going to receive it, and the people that can't, and that's okay too. And, you know, I've done a lot of interviews and stuff like that, and like, I've learned to not read the comments, first of all, because like for every, let's say 10 awesome comments, there'll be like one that, like, you know, says something really mean. And like with me and my obsessive mind, I'll like want to keep focusing on like the one bad comment, which, you know, for all I know, could be some random person who doesn't know anything about the subject and is just trolling around. But you know, yeah, it's helping me remember to stick to the people that, you know, need this. I think it was Oprah who talks about, like, you can't possibly give your energy to everybody and their reactions, because in the end, it has nothing to do with you. So it's just been really awesome. You know, I had a Kickstarter for my movie, and just with the Kickstarter alone, I posted a video with it talking about my story. I got such a big response just from the Kickstarter. I had people from all over the world emailing me and sending me like a picture of their chip from their first meeting and stuff like that. And like, that was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And like, this is why I'm doing this. And it makes it all worth it.
There you so much for what you shared. I will add that when I published my book, when I was getting ready to publish it, I guess there were two kind of negative things, and then one really amazing thing that surprised me. So one negative was I did have an extended family member who, I think out of fear that they were going to be in some way made to look bad, did threaten to sue me. So that was, but it wasn't that difficult for me, because they had a small part in the book anyway. I just took them out because I didn't want anyone to feel scared or overexposed. I really didn't. I went out of my way to anonymize people, everyone except myself. And so that was hard for a little bit. And I did talk with a lawyer just to make sure I knew my rights. But it worked out just fine. The second one was 2 ex-boyfriends that I wrote about in my book. And I hadn't spoken with them for years, and they both called me, not on the same day, thankfully, but they called or reached out. And the first one was negative and felt that I was putting him at risk, that people would know. and again, because I had talked with that lawyer, I knew that it was okay that I shared my part of things as long as I told the truth. And I didn't, I mean, for me, it was okay, particularly because I went out of my way to portray this person in a good light. And, and so I was able to give them feedback and just, just try to be compassionate, but also I own my story. And so I get to say what my truth is, and that's my right. So I wish them well. And the other boyfriend called to apologize to me, which was actually very healing. It was someone I hadn't spoken with in years, and after reading my story, he called to apologize and just recognized that he had been insensitive way back when. And so that was very, very sweet. And he was happily married and had kids, and so it wasn't about reconnecting the two of us, but just as heart to heart, like, hey, you matter to me, and I'm sorry I wasn't more sensitive back then. So that was, just life has its own unfolding, and we show up for that. And so So moving into another question, something a viewer asked is, what is the difference between sex, porn, and love addiction for women? Specifically, I had someone say to me recently, I am not a sex addict, I am a porn addict, and there is a difference. And research has shown us that there are some differences, actually, if someone only uses porn in their sexual compulsion versus sexual involvement with other people, versus relational kind of patterns or more objectified sexual patterns. So some of that language is out there, but I'm curious about what your personal experience is. How do you identify, and what has meaning for you? Does it matter? When I published my book, I called it Sex Addiction and Other Temporary Insanities, and I was using sex addiction as an umbrella term, and then thinking that love addiction and romance addiction and porn addiction and all that was kind of fit in there. But I'm actually getting more and more of an impression that it's not necessarily the best way to describe things because of the stigma and precision issues. So anyway, that's my question. Would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Same order?
Anybody feel like jumping in more than anybody else?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, like you, I've always thought that sex addiction was an umbrella term. So I have used all of the terms interchangeably at different times. I'm not an expert on this, though, so I'm not sure how a doctor would describe it. I mean, I would think that it has something to do with the way that you act out. If you happen to act out using a lot of porn, which was usually my primary method of acting out, was binge watching porn. And then if you have a lot of sexual partners, and use that as an escape route or coping mechanism, then I guess you would be a sex addict. But I do think that it is an umbrella term, and I'm interested to hear from the other two to see if there is much of a difference between those things that I hadn't thought about before.
Personally, for me, I identify mostly as a love addict, but with the sex addiction, it was like mistaking sex as love and using sex as a tool or as a way to validate or get anything close to love. So I always put sex and love addiction together because they can look the same. But for me, the main intention was trying to feel something externally.
So I did an episode on this topic. It's still to this day like my most popular episode. It's episode 18, and it's called Not About Sex. And when I was early in recovery, my therapist had told me that sex addiction qualified as what's called an intimacy disorder. And so we talked a lot about, like, what is an intimacy disorder? How does that manifest itself? And what are the consequences of that? And if we look at addiction as I do, which is just a symptom, addiction is a symptom. And it's a symptom that there's a much deeper problem going on in your life. And the way that symptom manifests is going to be a little different for everybody. And it's going to be related, in my personal opinion, to your experiences growing up, your childhood, the trauma you experienced. And so things are going to show up a little bit differently for you. Maybe it shows up as pornography and it's binge watching pornography. I had a phase where I did that for sure. Maybe it shows up in that cosmic lover, searching for that love or that relationship over and over again. Maybe it shows up in I can't connect with other people, so I have one night stands over and over again. Whatever it is, I love the umbrella term of the intimacy disorder, and just how that manifests. And if we look at addiction from that model of a symptom of a deeper problem, then I feel like whatever you relate to, whatever term works for you, if it's sex addiction, if it's porn addiction, if it's love addiction, if it's relationship addiction, if it's intimacy disorder, whatever word relates to you or it resonates with you that gets you into some sort of recovery, that's the word you need to use. And it doesn't matter. Like if it's, I use sex addiction again as an umbrella term, as we were talking about, but if it's love addiction and it gets you into recovery, awesome. If it's porn addiction and it gets you into recovery, awesome. I think whatever term you use, as long as it gets you moving forward, is the right term to be using.
Thank you. Well, I just can't bear to stop talking now, and it's.
No, I feel the same way. I'm like, what's the next question?
I know. So let's think of one.
Talking to these women. It's just so rare that we all get to be together in the same space. Like, I know that they exist, but to be together is very rare.
I know. I already had a big cry just sitting here before we were filming, and I believe that what I was doing was grieving a place that was frozen of the isolation that I have often felt as a female sex addict, love addict, porn addict, and particularly in trying to educate publicly from the place of my own story. There just aren't that many people who are willing to go public. It takes a lot of courage, I think, and a lot of support. So I guess maybe that's a question that I could ask is, in order to pull this off, what kind of support have you had around you? I have had the support of my husband. We were dating at the time I started writing, but he never wavered, ever. I mean, there was a chapter we worked on together and needed some editing, but his support, he helped me with editing and just love, lots of love, believing in me, in this project, believing in the importance of educating all people, not just women. I had so many friends support me. They read drafts of my book or excerpts from it before I published. They said, take that out, that, and I listened to them because I trusted them. Sometimes it's hard when it's your own story to have perspective. So I had a writing coach. I mean, I really did have a lot of support around me, plus all of recovery, like you mentioned. So yeah, what kind of support did you and do you have to make this work for you?
You want to start?
Anybody?
There you go.
I'm really grateful for these two people. They're a married couple named Patty and John, and I call them my spirit parents because they feel like the mom and dad I always wanted. But I met them, actually, what's interesting, 5 years ago to this date. And it was the day that I said that I wanted to start loving myself and be happy and be in a healthy relationship. And they guided me into, helping me love and forgive myself and others, and really taught me how to love and forgive and accept myself. And to this day, I go to dinner at their house every Sunday. And so they're really, really, really big support for me. And, all the friends I've made in recovery, and anybody who still supports me through all the times I've spoken my truth and supports me in my projects. And those are the people that mean the world to me.
I've been really blessed for having my husband in my life. He was a big part of my recovery. He was the first person that I ever told that I thought I was a sex and porn addict too. And it was such a relief to be able to be that honest and real with another person. And I'd never been that vulnerable before. And he was so supportive from the start. And he was also in recovery for drug addiction. So he was able to kind of hold me in that space of just understanding those kind of confessions I was making and being able to hold space for me. And I was encouraged by that kind of support to go to 12-step meetings for the first time. And so the Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous community was really helpful for me as well, just because meeting other like-minded people when you feel so entirely alone and ashamed can be incredible, life-changing. So having that community of support has been helpful. And then the readers, just the people who have reached out to me, because recovery is ongoing, and you can still feel alone and ashamed and triggered. And hearing from other people going through that, or people who have been there, has been very helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a large portion of my family who still don't know about my own addiction and what I do. And that's been difficult. But I think my support has definitely come from my 12-step community and readers. And I have a few close friends that know and have been just incredibly supportive. Wow, just beyond supportive with the whole thing. And then also just people that listen. This last year, my mother got sick and passed away, and it has been probably one of the hardest years of my life. And I still have emails from people that I don't know, readers, I mean, not readers, but listeners that I don't know, and who I go back and read their email just because of the amount of support that they provide, and just the amount of love that they have extended as I've gone through that difficult time. So I think when you speak your truth, you build that support community around you.
Thank you. Thank you all. So I wonder what you might want to say to someone out there watching this video. Maybe it's a woman, maybe it's a man, maybe it's not a gender specified person, but they are out there and they are feeling isolated, they are feeling alone, they are struggling, they are feeling powerless over sex, love, porn addiction. And what would you say to them? What would you want them to hear? What would you have wanted to hear back when you were at your worst level of powerlessness? I'm curious what you would feel moved to say to them.
I would first say that you're not alone. And I'd also let you know that when you speak your truth, the ones who love you will only be able to love you even more. The more you show of yourself, the more we can love you. The more you show yourself, the more we can embrace you. And you can't heal something unless you speak it. So once you speak those words, it's very, very powerful. And I swear to you, miracles will happen.
Definitely, you are not alone, and you're not unlovable. And don't be afraid to try a lot of different things. My recovery from sex addiction, I did the 12-step thing, but I also tried a lot of different things. I mean, I did meditation and yoga. I did something called the Hoffman process. I tried a lot of different things trying to find the one solution that was just going to make me right finally. I didn't realize that it was the combination of those efforts that was helping me all along. So don't be afraid to design your own path to healing.
I would say that you are worth recovery. Like, I echo everything that's been said. You're not alone. Try a million different things. Just keep trying and start to really try to live that truth that you are worth that effort, that you are worth the process, that you are valuable just being alive and being who you are, and that you can do this, that there is success. This couch is full of success, and that you can be who and live the life that you want to be.
Thank you. I would say that there are people out there that will love you, that haven't even met you yet. So if you feel alone and unlovable and full of shame, you may have to work pretty hard to get through to find the support you need. I know I did. There was a lot of trial and error, but I found eventually people that loved me and that I could love. And I thought that couldn't be possible. I didn't even know what that was, but I started to see it, and then I started to want it for myself. I saw it in recovery, therapy, many different things. And yeah, sometimes other people have to love us into loving ourselves. And sometimes through love of others, we keep some for ourselves. And just, as I said, however it works, work it, because you are worth it. So thank you for spending this time with us tonight. You know, it's interesting. People ask sometimes, well, what's sex, love, or porn addiction like for women? Well, it's different for every woman, but this is what recovery looks like for 4 women. So I just invite you to look. This is the face of recovery for sex, love, and porn addiction. Now, we don't speak for all women or all people, but I think what I notice when I look at these beautiful women is the sparkle in their eyes and the love in their hearts that would enable them to go public with their story, to try to help people who they don't even know. And so that kind of generosity of spirit and articulation, which you've heard, is just, yeah, that's what sex addiction looks like. And thanks for all of you who've been watching us live. I see the live feed. I see some familiar faces on there. And thanks for spending your time. And for those of you who watch on YouTube, feel free to, if you want to follow the channel and hit the little bell to subscribe for this episode or future episodes. And, oh, my my husband wrote a note. He said, I have to read this. Hi, honey. I'm watching the broadcast with tears in my eyes because it's so big, so monumentous to have you 4 women on the screen live, 4 trailblazers. And you all spoke so courageously and vulnerably. Very powerful. You hit it out of the park with this one. Well, thank you. I feel that way about you and your willingness to be here with me tonight. I know the 2 of you have another special event here that we're going to be going to. So I'm excited. We're excited for you. And so more will be revealed in the road to recovery. But thanks for your time tonight. And any last words, anybody? No? Okay. Well, that's all for Facebook Live. And I will close with may you feel loved, may you feel cherished, and may you love and cherish yourself. Good night. I'm going to have a good cry now.